Hey everyone, welcome to our first meeting of 2024 on our American Mussar Community Gathering. We will be doing our second week exploring the soul trait of trust, and we will get started the way we always do with a short meditation. So please relax and close your eyes. Take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. Exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the highway. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. Well, welcome Lori and Nancy and Marjorie and Stephanie, who is just connecting to audio. So for our initial discussion, I want to check in and see, how did trust in the divine show up for you, if at all, since our last meeting. I know some of you were here, some of you weren't, but this idea of trust, were there moments of worry? Were there times where you were able to kind of let go of a situation and figure that it would kind of turn out okay? Yes, Alyssa.
I think that trust and balance enables you to be patient, and that trust is linked to letting go of control. If you cannot control the situation or act judiciously, you may need to trust in a higher being.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like that connection to patience for sure. Yes, Marjorie. You're still on mute.
I'm not anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I haven't been in here for a couple weeks between the holidays and family, but last week on Tuesday, I was up north in northern Wisconsin, and on the way home, I ran over a deer. Somebody was going east. No, they were going east on a highway at night, and it's pretty remote, northern Wisconsin, and I was going east, and the car in the other lane had already run over the deer. And but when I saw it, by the time you see something in front of your beam, at the end of your headlight beam, it was too late for me to realize what it was. It was something flopping around. I thought it was a garbage bag. And so I ran over the poor thing, and I felt worse about hitting the deer than anything else. But as Alicia said, there are some things that you have zero control over. And I learned, I just proceeded with what I had to do, claim file my insurance claim, the car, I had it looked at today, and everything is going to be all right. But
Mm,
at first, it was pretty upsetting. I felt so bad for this animal.
mm,
But there's more deer. There's other. So, we all hit circumstances that we have absolutely no control over. And initially it can be really upsetting, and you just have to learn to breathe through it, and everything's okay now. Nobody was hurt except the deer. And my mom was even in the car, and she's like, I stayed calm because it happened so fast. So you just have to learn that we're going to all run into things, and it's all going to it's okay. Fortunately, you got to look at how the positive outcome.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is
thank
all.
you so much. Other thoughts or comments about trust, or ways that you've been challenged in recent weeks that maybe your Mussar practice came into play? Yeah, Sue.
It wasn't so much an example, but I remembered, because when I first started with Mussar a number of years ago, I write a statement down every morning, and I still do that. And my statement for trust, I had forgotten this, but I write down, "Can ye hear right sown? May it be God's will." And then I say, "Trust and be trustworthy." But I was reflecting on that because I had forgotten that when we talked, and I wanted to add that as my statement. Can ye hear at sown? May it be God's will. That resonates with the whole idea of
Mm.
letting go of the control factor. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really a good connection. And we don't always, in today's day and age, sort of think about things in terms of God's will or God's plan or other things. But, um, when we hit the deer, it's certainly not our plan. Maybe there's not a plan there, but there is something that's out of control. And, aligning ourselves with the good in the universe, even when some not so good things happen is good. Yeah, Marjorie.
Well, after, you're saying that maybe part of the plan is a negative situation can occur. So maybe part of the plan is, how do we turn that into a positive, or how, even if it's not like an ultra positive, how do we just navigate it? And I feel like maybe that's a part of the plan, is
Yeah.
being able to come up with resolution and go through it. Like, what's the there's a midah, is it ecumenity? What's the one where it's equal, where we're equally balanced?
Equanimity.
Thank you. I can never say that.
Yeah.
Equanimity. So I think maybe that is part of the plan.
Yeah.
Nobody asked you. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's true. And it could have been, you know, ended up in a screaming match between you and your mom, or something. But it was navigated in a much more positive way. Anyone else care to share a comment? Yeah, Alyssa.
I think that the diagram figure 8 on page 80 is very useful in terms of being able to make decisions.
Um,
And that other soul traits could be added in.
yeah. Yeah, is that the difficult decision tree?
Yes,
Yeah.
page 80.
Yeah, there we go. Sue's got holding it up there. I don't have a copy of that I can easily pull up, but um, I like your idea of something like that being expanded to
Yes.
cover other soul traits. And that one focuses more on um, enthusiasm and patience, but there's sort of other decisions that we can make. What soul trait am I going to practice in this situation?
Well, if you look at the tree, for example, if it says, you have to ask the question, can you control the situation? And if you can't, then you go to patience. But if you can, this is very interesting. You ask the question, are your needs more important
Mm,
than the other person? Which you pointed out and I underlined that question. Are my needs more important than the needs of the people in front of me? Which I thought was very a good point that you made. Whose needs are more important in the situation?
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think we're kind of still on the patience track where, okay, I can't control it, practice patience. Yeah, it kind of helps me realize the situation's going to pass, but you could also just as easily practice trust. Okay, I can't control this. I need to be patient, and I'm going to trust that it's going to be okay. So the two are very complementary, which is, I think, where Alyssa just kind of started us earlier today. It's either Frank or Linda.
Um, one of the things that's going on in our community here is there's some of us who wrote a peace letter in Israel about Israel, what's going on, and it has to do with trust,
Mm,
that we care about the same thing, but in different ways.
mm,
And so one of the things that I've been trying to work on is how do we honor each other and respect each other when we see things differently,
yeah.
and not to call each other names
Mhm.
and not to say bad words. And so that's trust,
Yeah.
is that you feel that you could say your truths without being told that you're somehow beyond the pale.
Mm.
So that's what I've been working on last couple of weeks with others.
Thank you, Frank. It reminds me of how Rabbi Ira Stone frames Musar, which is learning to bear the burden of the other person. And Rabbi David Jaffe often talks about patience, or Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. It's like, how do we maintain a relationship with people? Especially, but not exclusively, but let's say within the Jewish community, where there are some really significant differences around issues of Israel, Palestine, and many other things, or people who we have political differences with. And it can be hard to maintain those relationships. And there's a big habit of um, labeling other people or defining other people as kind of being, I think, what Frank was referring to. And I was listening to a Judaism Unbound podcast about American Jewish history today. And it was sort of talking about the same things. Well, as people like certain groups, that's here's what's okay and here's what's not okay. And if you're in the what's not okay, then you're a bad Jew, or you're not really Jewish, or you're this, or you're that, or you're um, have lost sight of humanity. There's a lot of labels we can do. So it's powerful work that you're talking about, Frank. And it's powerful and it's hard. And we'd like to think that it is, and then how do we decide when is it time for us, if we look at our if we look at our spectrum diagram, where is it, when is it time to kind of trust that things are going to work out in the end versus we need to tie our camel and take some action? When is it sitting back and being patient? And, I think a lot of where we get into trouble is people get fearful, and then when we get fearful, it's easier to lash out at other people. It's easier to, label them rather than talk to them. And so, yeah, I know I've kind of said a lot there, but this is kind of a big topic. Well, to kind of step back a moment, and I think this is kind of relevant. Oops, I have the wrong one bolded here. But what I wanted to talk about was these are our assumptions for our Mussar practice. We haven't talked about these very much in the last couple of months. But for each chapter in the book, there's one of these assumptions. And I am really interested today in this third one. We are driven by the conflict between the evil inclination and the good inclination, the Yetzer Ra and the Yetzer Tov. And as a reminder, the raw inclination is not kind of the murderous sort of evil. It's our self-centeredness, it's also our preservation instincts, it's our ego, it's our fears, it's our sexuality, it's our drives. And the good inclination is our compassion. It is our ability, this really uniquely human ability to cooperate with one another, to get along. And in any given situation, we're getting both of these messages, the old image of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, which is a simplified version of this. And so how does that kind of apply to what we're talking about when we're talking about trust, or when we're talking about some of these challenging situations or these situations outside of our control? Why is it relevant that we have these competing impulses? Yeah, Sue. Remember to unmute, please.
Sorry, I thought I hit that button. I think it's very relevant because all of those things you mentioned are why we don't trust. If we have, if we're fearful, we're filled with ego, self-centered, not thinking about the other person, as I mentioned before, then we don't have the trust. I feel that that's very clear, that takes us away from trusting in the other person, trusting in the situation. If we're scared, fearful, if we're thinking about ourselves, I think it's a direct correlation.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Marjorie.
I think I have to trust my own intuition. It comes down to, can you repeat what you just asked though? I was like, can you clarify just one more time what you're asking about the points about our Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov?
Yeah, so I was asking in a very long way, how does that relate to trust?
Yeah, I guess it's just trusting myself, my own intuition, and it's also a learning process.
Mhm.
And hopefully that been able to process the information, and I just trust that I look at what's in front of me and either, it's okay or it's not okay,
Mm.
or proceed cautiously.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is there's also kind of a level of discernment and kind of understanding, all right, well, what's okay, what isn't okay, and I need to be okay that I have an instinct and a sensibility about how I want to proceed and to
Trust
listen
myself.
to
I
that.
have to just trust myself,
Yeah.
part of it.
Other thoughts? Okay, well, let's go a little bit. Let's delve into trust again. This is a quote from Rabbi David Jaffe, who, among other things, wrote the IGS Tikkun Midot curriculum. May I have a volunteer to unmute and read this first bullet?
Okay. Bitachon, trust, may be one of the most difficult midot to acquire. Cultivating bitachon, trust, means moving towards no barking. Means balancing trust in a loving God or a reliable universe with taking initiative. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe to grow in bitachon, trust. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe. Wow.
And if you could read the second one too, please.
Somebody else want to read it? Or do you want me to read it?
I can read it, Marge.
Okay, Sue, take it away.
If you are unsure of the divinity, you can think of it as trust in the universe, or trust that doing the right thing will work out okay in the end.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna put these in the chat. All right, so what is Rabbi Jaffe's point? What is Rabbi David Jaffe? What is he arguing? How is he framing this issue of what trust or bitachon is? Yes, Frank.
For some reason, I remember that Einstein had a question for us, and the way I remember it is how important it is the way we view the world. Is it friendly?
Hmm.
This reminds me of that. And the idea is that not trusting too much, but trusting enough to know
Hmm.
that by being engaged, somehow it's going to work out okay.
Yeah. I love that Einstein question too. Is the universe friendly?
Hmm.
Marianne.
I think those are two big assumptions that the rabbi is making, that God is a loving God. I mean, I think, to me, really, the question is, what is the nature of God? Why is he assuming God's a loving God? That seems like a big leap. Or that the universe it's a reliable universe. I mean, maybe those are just assumptions, but those are huge assumptions to me. Um, and I think those are very interesting questions to consider. What is the nature of God and what is the nature of the universe? Interesting and germane, really, to our lives. But I know that's kind of not what you were asking, but it kind of followed along in a way with what Frank was bringing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no, I do think it's pretty open-ended. Hang on a second. Who's on the phone?
It's Martin.
Oh, hi, Martin.
Yeah, hi.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, Marianne, that was fine. I mean, I think that, we're using these statements to kind of stimulate our thinking and our understanding. And I think you're highlighting, some of the underlying assumptions of where he's coming from. And those are not necessarily, by implication, things you'd agree with, or those are worth discussing in and of themselves, much less how they impact us in the world. Yes, Marge.
So I just think it's interesting, like his second sentence here. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe in. You don't believe to grow in bitachon, which kind of goes back to what Mariana said about questioning, is God a loving God, or is the universe reliable? I mean, maybe I don't believe that God is always loving or the universe is reliable. Can I still grow in trust? And is it it's developing. I guess it's a learning process that makes it's interesting. I just thought that was really interesting. Like it's difficult I just think that second sentence is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the hardest, as he begins, this is one of the most difficult soul traits to acquire. This is, whether it's trusting yourself or it gets into big issues, about what's the world like and how do I show up in it? And how do I deal with unexpected things that happen? And I think as we talked about a couple weeks ago, a lot of people don't teach the soul trait at all, or if they do, they kind of put it at the end when people have dropped out of the class anyway. But for me, I put it early. It's the fourth one that I teach because it is so powerful. If you can cultivate any level of this, it can help combat worry. And it is also a heavy lift. It takes a while to work on this, and especially when there's all kinds of icky things going on.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, this is Martin. I have a question when you're ready. Okay.
I'm ready.
Yeah, so I just heard someone made a comment about is God a loving God? Loving is a feeling, and does God have feelings is my question. Because the reason I ask that is that feelings, that's a human trait. And so does God have human traits? That's just my generic question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge question. And
Yeah.
I think it depends on what your conception of God is.
Okay, well, that goes back to a human decision then. If it's what a human conception of God is, that's a human decision. That's God's not a part of that conversation. Then, if the human is deciding the concept of God, right?
Well, it is. God is what God is. And a lot of
that would be my comment too, that God just is. And I think that's it, I think. And then the rest is, and then whatever we do, that's our human stuff, right?
Yeah, but I think a lot of the way we describe God is metaphors. And so to say a loving God, does that literally mean that God has an emotion of love? Or is it
Okay,
just
yeah,
God is benevolent and caring and supportive, or in ways that we would interpret in that?
Yeah, okay, that's a good way of phrasing all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
good question.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
Marianne, did you have a comment? I saw your hand for a sec.
Oh yeah, I don't think love to me is not has nothing to do with emotion. So I just want to say that.
Thank you. Sue.
I just wanted to say in response to God, I personally believe that we are created in the image of God. So when God is kind and compassionate and slow to anger, I feel like that's the message to us to be, or love it, we talk about loving God. To us to be loving, to be slow to anger, kind, compassionate. And that's how I see it, that we are made in the image of God.
Would that
That's my
apply
view.
to the, yeah, I'm sorry. So I have one more comment if I may, Mr. Martin.
Sure.
Yeah, so would the criminals and the murderers be made in the image of God also? Well, because we're all human, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's a very
Yeah.
difficult, of course, when you say that, and then you have to justify all the terrible people in the world. Are they made in the image of God? Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part of saying that. I feel like we are, and then we have choices. And maybe that goes back to the evil inclination and the good inclination, then
the
we
free
make a
will.
bad choice and then,
Yeah, correct.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's how I would answer that.
Marge.
When I first started studying Mussar, I had a really difficult time with that concept also. Like, how do we deal with, I always think of people like Jeffrey Dahmer or like really awful people. And then I've learned, I believe that we are all born in the image of God. And over time, souls become occluded for whatever reason. And then, as adults, obviously, you see these horrific things. But I really believe that at birth, we are all created in the image of God. And that's
I would agree. I would agree. Children are not evil.
Well, I mean, even, unfortunately, there are probably children at a young age who start showing that behavior. But I really think like initially, but that's what I feel.
Yeah. Okay, well, there is a lot of enthusiasm about breakout groups earlier, so I'm going to put our discussion topic in the chat. This is from Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra, who was a 12th century sage from Spain. Very extensive Torah commentaries. So if you ever do like Torah study, you probably have heard Ibn Ezra. So he wrote, "The past is no more. The future is yet to come. The present is a fleeting moment. Why worry?" So I see this as a description of mindfulness, and it's claiming that it can prevent worry. So kind of in your breakout groups, the discussion is, do you agree or disagree? So let's see here. Okay, so the rooms are open. Okay, welcome back. So I'm curious, how were those discussions? And what do you think of this kind of mindfulness connection? Helpful, not helpful? Who would like to begin? Maybe someone we haven't heard from today.
Go for it, Harry.
Oh, go for it. Okay, I'll go
You can
for it.
trust this is a benevolent environment.
Okay. We had an interesting discussion. Basically, there was a I guess a mantra or philosophy, sort of a philosophy someone told me about, this idea about the past and the future. That if you are a type of person that thinks about the past, about regrets, which is about the past, and also at the same time thinking about or being anxious about the future, what are you doing for that moment that you have? You're urinating on it.
Mm,
Because just think about it. What are you spending your time on? About
Mm.
something, about regrets that you can't have anything to do about, or the future, and you're thinking about and having anxiousness about it. So at that moment, if you have of the present, you're ruining it.
mm.
So that was our takeoff discussion in that regard. So it's something to remember when you get caught up in those types of that type of thinking. If you
Yeah.
value the present, if you value
Yeah.
that present, yeah.
It is a memorable way to frame the issue. Sure. Thank you. I know that's a tough one to top, but in terms of memorability, but who else would like to share about their discussion? Yes, Stephanie.
My reaction doesn't work, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I was commenting that I worry because time is so fleeting, and I worry how quickly time passes. And in my group, it was mentioned, well, we are always in the present moment. So it's like everything is right now. So, you can think about it as, time is happening right now and be in that moment. And I always think about it went by so fast. And I think that's something I want to maybe work on a little bit more to
Yeah.
be in the moment, not worry because we don't have the future yet, and the past moment has gone
Yeah.
on, but right now is where we are.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, Marge.
I look at these three time frames as a learning tools, because I think without history, we've got to look at, well, you do have to look at the past to use it as how do we go forward and what do we change? Because history does repeat itself.
Mm.
And I like to use in the future, I have to make plans for the future for certain things. In the present, I mean, I do like the idea of, just live for the moment.
Mhm.
But I do think that these three different time frames, I think they are important. Whether or not, wait, what was the question though? Are they like,
Well, his conclusion was why
describing-
worry?
Right.
It's recognizing these three different time periods.
right,
is
about
that
worrying
why
about it?
worry?
No, right. I wouldn't worry about it, but I do use them.
Mhm.
As Alfred E. Newman said, if anybody remembers Mad Magazine, what, me worry? Okay, that is all.
Thank you. Yes, Sue.
To add one thing we talked about is, and I think Greg, you had meant, I remember you stating this another time, was that the things that we worry about usually don't happen. It's
Mhm.
the other things, the
Yeah.
bad things. So that would be why worry, right?
Mm.
Another take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a great Mark Twain quote, which we've looked at in some of the past cycles, which is some of the worst things that I ever experienced actually happened to me. and then we can put ourselves through all this suffering about what could happen tomorrow. And then, that doesn't happen. But something else, I think, Sue, I love your point, something else, which we hadn't spent all this time worrying about shows up. And then, what good did all that service and that worry do us? Any other comments? Or we can go ahead. All right, let's take a look. Martin, did you want to add something?
Oh, let's see. Just some of my comments in our group was that, yeah, the present is not fleeting because the present is always with us. We never leave the present, right?
That's true.
Yeah. And then the other thing I commented was that the more we trust ourselves and our own judgment, then there could be less worry.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Alyssa.
Yes, I just realized that these three aspects of time operate along a continuum. And so the present does in fact become the past and the future becomes the present. So I think we have to be aware of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so as we're getting ready to close, I want to put up, well, I'm going to, and I am putting up this list of potential actions. The mantra for trust is trust in God or trust in the divine, but tie your camel. And then the question is, what is one action or what is one thing you can focus on in the coming week that will help you move more towards balance?
Thank you.
And here are some things that can, some ideas which you can use directly, or they can inspire you to do other stuff. Like, for example, you can ask the divine or a higher power or someone else for help. Use a mantra to counter worry. Surrender your need for a particular outcome. I mean, this is a really big one, especially when we're talking about, things that are out of our control. And I'm only going to be happy if X happens, or I'm going to work super hard to make Y happen. And Y may not happen, and Y might not even be the best course of action. It's just the one that you thought about. But as much as we can surrender the need for a particular outcome, that's part of trust. That's part of letting the universe unfold. Another is to take action to help other people. That's something that we can control. And that's a way we can get out of our own head. And then the last one is to practice some level of personal trust, which is trusting that, I can trust myself that whatever happens, I'll be able to handle it. Or trusting that the divine will be there to hold your hand and to help you through it, even when things are not going as we want them to. So I'd like you to just stop and think for a minute about what is it that you're going to do this week? What is your action? When anyone, yes, Sue.
I really like the last one. I wrote that down, the practicing personal trust. I like, what Martin said too, the more we trust in our own judgment. So what I'm gonna do is think of it in the sense of trusting myself first and then trusting God. Because I've always thought of trust as trusting God. But I think we have to, in my mind, I have to trust myself. And that also relates back to what Margie said about the instincts. What are my instincts?
Oh, looks like you froze, Sue. Or was that me? Oh, Sue, you were on a roll. Well, what Sue was saying, is I was reminded, when I was applying for rabbinical school, they kept saying, "What are you going to do with your rabbinate?" And I would say, "I don't know, that's 5 years down the road, and I've changed careers a bunch of times, and this is really a bitachon play. This is a trust play that the right job, the right opportunity is going to be there for me." Well, I'm not 5 years away. I am one semester away from ordination, and I'm looking around, and it's really easy to kind of get into a worry, and what kind of job am I going to get? And gee, I'm not seeing any jobs advertised, and it is hard. It is really hard to kind of stay in that lane of, and I like what Sue was saying about it. So part of it's also trusting myself. I will find a way to contribute, and there will be people who will want to work with me. And so it's being patient, it's trusting in the universe that things are going to unfold. Yeah, Linda.
You could be our rabbi, Greg.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will, whatever other type of job I may get, this group will continue as long as it makes sense for us to do so. So
Greg,
Yeah.
what denomination?
I'm in a trans-denominational seminary, so I could work. I tend to gravitate more towards the liberal, the reform, the conservative. Or it might be a synagogue, it might be outside of a synagogue. So we shall see. Okay, well, I think that means it is time for us to do our closing meditation. So please close your eyes and take in a nice leisurely breath and a nice leisurely exhale. And just notice the light passing through your eyelids. This is the light of your divine spark. Feel the warmth and the compassion and the love and the support for you just the way you are. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.